Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes, ready for a deep dive into a real classic.
Always up for a good one, especially one that bends your mind a little bit.
Like a time travel adventure.
Exactly. And with H.G. Wells, you're in for a ride.
That's right, we're tackling the time machine. This book has been around for over a century, and honestly, it still feels so relevant today.
It really does. I mean, it's amazing how Wells managed to pack in so many big ideas into this, relatively short story.
Right.
We've got time travel, evolution, class struggles, the dangers of just getting too comfortable. It's all there.
Okay, so before we get lost in the fourth dimension, how about we give a quick rundown for those who might need a refresher?
Sure. So basically, the time machine follows this inventor. He's never actually given a name in the book.
Right.
But anyway, he figures out how to travel through time, builds this amazing machine, and, well, takes it for a spin, ends up in the year 802,701. And that's where things get really interesting. He finds out that humanity has split into two totally different species, the Eloi,
Yeah.
who are these beautiful, graceful beings, but also kind of childlike and not very bright. And they're the Morlocks.
Yeah, the Morlocks. Definitely not as charming, to put it mildly.
That's one way to put it.
But what I always find so fascinating is how Wells uses this whole journey into the future to comment on his own time, Victorian England.
Totally. He's not just writing a fun sci-fi adventure. He's using it to explore the anxieties of his era, the gap between the rich and the poor, the rapid pace of industrialization, that kind of underlying fear of where all this progress is leading.
Exactly. So let's actually rewind to the very beginning of the story. We're at this dinner party, and the time traveler is holding court.
Yeah.
Right? He's described as having this, I love this detail, this bright, eager face.
Yes.
It immediately gives you a sense of who he is. Like, this guy is brimming with ideas, excited to share his discoveries.
Right, but here's where Wells is so clever. The other guests at the dinner, they're all these very established skeptical types. You've got a doctor, a psychologist, even the mayor. They represent that resistance to change, that, clinging to the status quo.
Oh, I love that contrast.
Mhm.
You can practically feel the tension in the room as the time traveler is trying to explain his theory of time as the fourth dimension. It's like Wells is poking at us asking, hey, are we really so sure about how reality works?
Totally. And he doesn't just talk about it in some abstract, theoretical way. He compares time to a line. I mean, there's that famous passage where he says, there is no difference between time and any of the three dimensions of space except that our consciousness moves along it.
Right.
It's like he's challenging us to actually visualize time as something you could travel through.
And then, as if that wasn't enough to blow their minds,
Right.
he pulls out this miniature version of his time machine,
Right.
and it vanishes right in front of them. I mean, talk about a mic drop moment.
It's like, how do you even respond to that? Your whole concept of reality has just been shattered. And then this guy claims he can actually travel through time.
It's incredible. And, that skepticism, even from these very scientific minds in the room,
Yeah.
I think it's something we still struggle with today, right?
Yeah.
That initial resistance to any idea that challenges our understanding of the world.
Absolutely. We see it with new technology, scientific discoveries, even, social and political movements. There's always that initial pushback. People are just clinging to what they think they know. But the time traveler,
Right.
he doesn't let that stop him. He truly believes in his vision, and he's going to prove it no matter what.
So the next week rolls around and everyone's back at the dinner party, waiting to hear about this adventure, right? I love how Wells describes him. He bursts into the room, his coat unbuttoned, and his breath coming short. It's like he's been through something truly extraordinary.
He has, and the way he just devours his food, barely speaking, it just adds to the mystery. It's clear that he's been changed by his experience, but he's not ready to talk about it, not just yet.
And that's where Wells really hooks us, right? We're left hanging, we're desperate to know what happened on his journey, and we just know, and he's about to take us on a wild ride.
So picture this. You're sitting at that table with everyone else, just waiting to hear about this incredible journey.
Yeah.
And when he finally starts to describe it, it's not at all what you'd expect. I mean, it's not the smooth, futuristic ride through time.
No, not at all. He describes it almost like a violent experience, this feeling of falling, this incredible speed, the world blurring around him.
Right.
He even compares it to being on a roller coaster, but like 1,000 times more intense.
And that's what makes Wells's writing so great. He could have just, glossed over the whole time travel part, but instead he really makes you feel it, the disorientation, the awe of seeing time just flying by.
Exactly. It's incredibly vivid. And then suddenly, boom, He arrives in the year 802,701, and it's not what you'd picture, right? No spaceships, no flying cars. He finds himself in this beautiful garden surrounded by these stunning people, the Eloi.
Yeah, and they're not just beautiful, they're carefree. They spend their days lounging around, eating fruit, soaking up the sun. It's like they've achieved this perfect utopia.
Right, but even in this paradise,
Yeah.
there's this undercurrent of unease, like something isn't quite right, something's off.
Definitely. The time traveler picks up on it right away. He's fascinated by the Eloi, of course, but he's also a little disturbed by them. They don't seem to have any curiosity, no real drive to learn or create anything. They're almost childlike.
It's like they've lost something essential. That spark, that drive to progress and explore. Like maybe their easy life has made them, I don't know.
Stagnant.
Yeah, stagnant. And then, on top of all of that,
Right.
the time machine goes missing.
Oh yeah, that definitely throws a wrench in the works. It reminds you that even in this seemingly perfect world, there's still danger lurking around every corner.
Exactly. And the time traveler is stranded in this unfamiliar future. And then we meet the other half of this future society,
The Morlocks.
the Morlocks. And let's be honest, their introduction is one of the creepiest parts of the whole book. He's exploring these ruins of a museum and catches a glimpse of something white and ape-like, just darting into the shadows. It's like Wells is tapping into our primal fears of the dark, the unknown.
And as he learns more about them, those fears just grow. They live underground. They only come out at night. They can't stand the light. They're the total opposite of the Eloi, like this dark, twisted reflection of humanity.
And, at this point in the story, we still don't know their role in this society. We just know they're there, hiding in the shadows. It's brilliant how Wells builds this suspense, You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Oh, absolutely. And it also gives Wells a chance to explore another big theme, social division. The time traveler has this theory that the Morlocks are descendants of the working class, forced to live and work underground, while the Eloi, well, they enjoy the fruits of their labor.
It's a chilling reflection of the class struggles of Wells's own time, but taken to this terrifying extreme. And that's where the real horror of the story starts to kick in. Because as the time traveler investigates, he discovers that the Morlocks aren't just living underground, they're preying on the Eloi.
And the scene where he figures it out, it's brutal. He finds these gnawed bones in a Morlock tunnel, and it hits him. The Eloi, they're not living in a carefree utopia. They're being farmed.
It's a complete shattering of that idyllic image we had at the beginning.
And it makes you think about the dark side of progress. Are we, even with good intentions, paving the way for a future where some benefit at the expense of others? I mean, are we already on that path?
It's a really uncomfortable question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the way Wells describes the Morlocks, it just adds to that unease. They're pale, sensitive to the light, practically blind. It's like they've devolved, they've lost their humanity because of their underground existence.
And what's really interesting is that the time traveler even starts to see himself in them, this primal fear, this aggression.
Right.
It starts to come out as he fights to survive.
It's like Wells is saying that we all have that potential for both good and evil inside us. And the choices we make, both individually and as a society, can push us in one direction or the other.
And those choices become even more critical when the time traveler finds himself trapped by the Morlocks in their territory, hunted.
So he's trapped, injured,
Yeah.
exhausted. I mean, it doesn't look good.
Not at all. But even in this desperate situation, you see that his mind is still working. That scientific mind, always analyzing, always looking for a way out.
Oh, yeah. He's definitely not the kind to just give up. And he's learned a thing or two about the Morlocks. Remember how they're terrified of the light?
Well, he figures out he can use that to his advantage.
It's like this intense game of chess, right? He's got to outsmart these creatures who are hunting him in their own domain.
Exactly. And he comes up with this plan to set a trap using fire.
Which is incredibly risky, considering they live underground.
Oh, absolutely. It could easily backfire on him, but at this point,
Yeah.
it's his only hope.
And you can just feel the tension in those scenes. The Morlocks are getting closer, drawn to him, but terrified of the flames. It buys him a little time.
Right, a little time, but time he desperately needs to try and get back to his time machine.
But that journey back is brutal. Wells really captures the terror of that night. The darkness, the Morlocks lurking just beyond the light. He describes it as feeling like, and I love this, a beast in a trap.
Chilling. And that's where things take another turn for the worse. He falls asleep. Just for a moment. And the Morlocks, they swarm him, put out his fire, steal his matches. It's a truly terrifying moment. You realize how vulnerable he is in this strange, hostile world.
It's heartbreaking because you know he's come so close. The way he describes the Morlocks in that scene. their soft little hands creeping over him.
Oh,
It
yeah.
sends shivers down your spine. It's like they've lost all trace of their humanity. They're just driven by this primal instinct.
Right, and then just when you think all is lost,
Yeah.
there's this twist. The forest behind him catches fire.
It's complete chaos. He manages to escape, but it's a bittersweet victory.
Yeah.
Weena,
Oh, we know.
the Eloi woman who befriended him,
Yeah.
she's lost in the fire.
It's a tragic moment, and it really underscores those unintended consequences. He's just trying to survive, but in doing so, he unleashes this destructive force that ends up changing this future world forever.
And that fire, I think, is such a powerful metaphor. It strips away that surface beauty of the Eloi's existence. Their paradise. It was built on a foundation of exploitation and inequality.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder if we're doing the same thing in our own time. Ignoring the problems, the inequalities, the environmental damage, all for the sake of comfort and convenience.
Definitely makes you think. But for the time traveler, there's no time to dwell on these bigger questions. He's still in danger, and he needs to get back to his time machine.
And he's not the same man who started this journey. He's seen the potential for great beauty, but also great horror in the future. He understands the true cost of progress.
And that's what makes the ending so powerful. He makes it back to his own time,
Yeah.
but he's forever changed by what he's seen. And when he tries to tell people about his experience,
Right.
no one believes him.
Of course not. It's easier to dismiss something than to actually confront it, especially when it challenges everything you thought you knew about the world.
Exactly. And then he disappears again, vanishes into time. All that's left are these strange white flowers.
It's like the ultimate symbol of his journey. He's become untethered from his own time, a traveler between worlds, forever seeking answers.
And that's where Wells leaves us, with more questions than answers. What does it really mean to understand time? What responsibility do we have for shaping the future? And ultimately, what does it mean to be human in a universe that's so much bigger and stranger than we can imagine?
And that, I think, is why The Time Machine continues to resonate with readers over a century later. It challenges us to think beyond our present, to confront these big questions, and to question our place in this grand scheme of things.
So well said. And that's a wrap on another deep dive here on Books and Bytes. We've just scratched the surface of this incredible story, so I highly encourage everyone to pick up a copy and explore it for yourselves. And remember, the next time you think about the future, think about the choices we're making today. Think about how those choices might impact the world yet to come. Until next time, happy reading.